Mike Cardano with Roto Experts in the Fantasy Sports Network here with you to discuss some daily fantasy baseball, Coors Field style. Now, we all know how popular it is for folks who are playing daily fantasy to try to jam players into their lineup that are playing in Colorado on any given night. And this holds true for Rockies players and the opposition players as well. Is there something to it? Well, sure there is. The Rockies lead the National League in runs scored, and they have the worst ERA in baseball by a pretty wide margin, and much of this is because of the runs that are scored at Coors Field. Now, the Rockies have played 48% of their games at home so far this season, but 60% of the runs they've scored have come there. And while their pitchers aren't any good in general, they have a 4.65 ERA on the road, and at home they have an ERA of 5.2. Now, one of the odd things daily fantasy players who have skin in the game on a regular basis have noticed is that this season, as a rule, the first game of each series played at Coors Field has been lower scoring than the rest. As a result, in essence, the suggestion has been made by more than one not to play Coors Field players in that first game. And we've got our own Drew Dinkmeyer on the line with us to talk about this anomaly and whether this is a thing or not, because after all, as daily fantasy players, we need to figure out whether it's actionable or not. Now, after some extensive research, Drew published his findings on this last week in a post that was available to our premium subscribers. And lucky for you, Drew was kind enough to take some time out of his day to shed some light on this topic for the Fantasy Sports Network viewers. So Drew, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Now, you wouldn't believe how many of our viewers have asked me this question, and while I don't have any scientific method to give them an answer, to reach a conclusion, my answer to everybody has been basically that anything that's happened in such a small sample size has to be considered as random until proven otherwise. But you actually went back and took an extensive look at the data. So how far back did you go? What did you find? And have I been giving folks bad advice?
No, you certainly haven't been giving folks bad advice, because for this year, certainly we've had 14 games, 14 series at Coors Field, so we've had a 14-game sample to evaluate whether that game one has any impact. And through that 14-game sample, it certainly looked that way for people who have been playing and experiencing it. The road team is averaging just 3.86 runs per game in those 14 games. So I decided to take the data back 10 years. I went back to 2004 through the current year in 2014, and that drew the sample out to 277 first games of the series. And when you draw the data out all the way over the 10-year span, what you get is in the first game, the road team averages 5.16 runs per game. In all the other games, the road team averages 5.39 runs per game. So about 0.2 runs less in the first game. That can be, chalked up to really variance in volatility. So over the last 10 years, the effect has been very, very minimal, if any at all.
Has there been any one dominant pitcher that skewed this that you could see?
No, so we took every game into the sample, and, for this year, it's been weird. It seems like Jorge De La Rosa has started a lot of the first games, but when you really draw out the sample over the last 10 years, you don't get any one pitcher that's registering heavily in the data. There wasn't a single starter, we're talking about 277 games. There wasn't a single starter that accrued more than a full season or 20 starts. So there's no single starter driving the data. The interesting thing is there has been, over the last 5 years, a little bit more of an effect. The road team in the first game has scored 4.76 runs compared to 5.5 runs. So if you want to say, okay, over the last 5 years, there's been some level of an effect, I can understand that. But when we draw the sample out, there's very little effect, and that suggests there's not much in the essence of predictability using this forward to kind of predict things.
Right, so, how does the reduced number of runs scored per game in the first game of the series compared to runs being scored in other ballparks? That's really, in essence, what the issue is. So, they've been scoring less, but is it still more than the other ballparks?
Exactly. So that's the real key here, because if you want it to be actionable, you need it to be not only a lot less runs than you expect, but less runs than the rest of the league. And so even if we take the last 5 years, which is a little bit skewed by this year's extreme data, where you get 4.76 runs per game for the road team, even if you take that, the road team on average over the last 10 years, or excuse me, any team, the scoring environment over the last 10 years, has averaged just 4.5 runs per game. So it's still the road team overall in Coors Field, even if you take this sample that has been reduced in terms of the run scoring, is still more than the league average over the rest of the field. So to me, the road team, which isn't priced on Coors Field prices on most of the sites, is still a worthwhile team to pick on in the first game of Coors Field.
What was this? I'll call it an anomaly. Did you look into whether it was more as a result of how the Rockies have been scoring or the away team? Did you look into that aspect of it?
Yeah, so we looked at all. We looked at the home team in the first game. We looked at the road team in the first game. And over the last 10 years in total, the home team in the first game has scored 5.57 runs. In all other games, they scored 5.73. And the road team has scored 5.16 in the first game and 5.39 in the road games in all others. So in both cases, it's about 0.2 runs less per game for the first game of the series, but certainly not enough to impact decision-making. You're still looking at over 5 runs per game for both teams, which is a good night in daily fantasy baseball.
Yeah. So, gun to your head, I'm guessing you're telling me that this is not something that you're suggesting is actionable.
No, I don't think it's actionable at all. I still think you want to take players from Coors Field, especially those with depressed prices. Usually, on most sites, that's the road team that's used to being priced at their own home ballpark. So even though there's a small effect, and we've seen it of late, especially this year being more exaggerated, that maybe the road team does struggle a little bit more in Coors Field, that very, very small effect is very likely variance. It's something that we can write off as not actionable.
Okay, all right. Listen, you can catch Drew and his sidekick Mike Leone weekdays as they appear with Dr. Roto and Tony Sincata on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, giving their thoughts and sharing some of their research and ideas on daily fantasy. And of course, you can read their insights and opinions as part of the premium package here at RotoExperts.com. Drew, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mike.